Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up SSH keys on your Linux server. SSH keys are functionally similar to username and passwords, but the keys are primarily used for automated processes and for implementing single sign-on by system administrators and power users. They're also more secure than just normal passwords since they're very difficult to brute force and you also can't guess them. And they're pretty easy to set up because once you have the key, you can store it on your system and then you can sign in with just a single command. And I'll show you how to set that up. All right, before we get started, there's a couple prerequisites that you need before we can do this. One is you need to already be able to SSH into the server with a username and password, which means you need to have SSHD running. You need to have an actual user on there with a password that you know. You need to know the IP address, and depending on the change that you're going to make on it, you're going to need sudo access to the server as well. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is to actually generate the SSH key pair, and we're going to do that with the SSH Keygen command. And if we run -- help first, we can see some of the options that it takes. The only one we're interested in today is the -t and the -f for the output. And for the type, we're going to do ed25519. And the output file, we're going to call it test. And let's actually stick that in the temp directory. We're not going to give it a passphrase, but if this was a production server, you would want to do so. That is if your key gets stolen, if someone sticks a USB drive in and takes it, or something like that, they would be able to log into your servers. Having a passphrase on that would protect it. But it does hinder automation, so that's up to you. In this case, we're going to skip it. And it's going to output the key pair. And if we change directory into temp, we can take a look at them. So we have test right here, which is the private key. This is the one that stays on our computer and we don't share it with anyone else. And we have the test.pub, which is the one that we're going to place on the server. Once we have our key pair, we're going to go ahead and copy over the public key to the server, and we're going to do that with the SSH copy ID command. So we're going to go SSH copy ID, and then the input is going to be temp/test.pub, and then the server. So we're going to do test at 192.168.1.20. which is the IP address of my server. This is the first time we've seen it, so we're going to accept it. And then we have to log into it, put in our password, and it's copied over. Now that the key's copied over, we should be able to log in using it. So let's give it a try. We're going to use -i for the identity file, which is the key that we just created, and then the user at the server IP. And looks like we're in. Let's go ahead and take this one step further and disable password login now that we have the key working. But before we do that, we're going to open up a second SSH connection just to make sure we don't lock ourselves out. So let's pop open another one, and we are going to SSH into it, /temp/test. And that is just to make sure that if we get locked out, we still have an open SSH connection so we can get back into it. All right, so what we're looking for is key authentication yes, which is on by default, but let's go ahead and uncomment it so it's very obvious that it's been enabled. And the other one we're looking for is password authentication. Here it is, password authentication. We're going to go ahead and uncomment that and change it to no. And once that is done, we are going to write it. Restart SSHD. We're going to log out and we're going to log back in, and we're back in. At this point, if we weren't able to log back in, that's why we have the second connection open. We would be able to go in and make the changes and get back in. Now that we have that set up, we want to make security easier, not harder. So we don't want to have to log in, putting in the full path for the identity file, because that's a pain in the butt and nobody really wants to do that. So how can we make that faster? So what we're going to do is on our local machine here, we're going to vim into our .ssh config. If I can type ssh/config file. And here you can see host server 1, host server 2, switch 1. Well, let's go ahead and add our new server to that. So here we're going to type in host, and let's call that host. Now we already used test host Linux. And then the host name is going to be the IP address. And then we are going to use the identity file. And then that is located in our /temp test. And then user is test. And that should be all we need. So we are going to write and save that. And now we should be able to just log in with SSH Linux. And we're in. Much easier. And that's how easy it is to set up SSH keys on a server. Remember, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I can't grow without you.